remain. Every patch around here was another home to another family, all obliterated. And what's left here, well, it's just a book, bits of a doll, a lamp, and a coffee maker. That's it.
This is one of the few houses not turned to matchsticks. It's now a desolate, empty place, drained of all its life. Memories linger everywhere. Fragments that Suzuki Mamoru is anxious are not lost forever. This must be a day trip for a kindergarten, he says. The army are just going to take it all away and burn it. If the children have died, this is going to be very precious to someone. Nobody knows how many have lost their lives here. And dazed by it all, we found Katsuhiro Watanabe, looking for his father and grandfather. His mother survived because she'd gone out shopping. For 4 generations, the Watanabes lived here, in a 2-story house. It's hard to believe it now. It's a nightmare. I want it to be a dream, says Katsuhiro. This is where I was born, my granddad and his dad, generation after generation. Just a couple of miles away, it's a different picture. The water didn't reach this far. But we found these language students who just fled to higher ground after a new tsunami warning.
Hi Alice, just heard the news about the earthquake.
Today Alice Caffin's family back in London managed to phone her for the first time to hear that she's safe.
I feel so much more relieved. Just even though my actual situation hasn't changed that much, I'm still in the same place. Just that I know that I'm not alone, and I can contact people back home is so much more reassuring.
Alice and the students are still stranded because this disaster has brought much of Japan to a standstill, and it seems impossible that life can ever return to Yuriage. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News in eastern Japan.
More than 100,000 troops have now been drafted in to deal with the crisis, and as each day goes by, the chances of finding survivors recedes. Our correspondent Rupert Wingfield-Hayes is the first British TV journalist to reach the town of Kesen Numa.
In Kesen Numa, reality has been turned on its head. A large ship now sits on a dockside. A fishing boat on top of a car on top of a fence, and a house in the middle of the street. This was Kesen Numa on Friday, as the massive tsunami swept in, tossing boats aside like children's toys, uprooting houses, and turning the city's streets into torrents of angry black water. 3 days after the tsunami, much of Kesen Numa is still underwater, and walled in by mountains of debris. Every street we tried to get down is jammed with piles of cars. Even the rescuers are struggling to find a way in. When they do, mostly what they're finding are bodies. This one, a man found trapped underneath a car. Kumagai. Nearby, I find Mr. Kumagai. His house has been completely destroyed. You can see the tide mark at the top of the first floor. Here. But he was lucky. He shows me where he says 3 bodies were lying until yesterday, one hanging from a lamppost. The old lady in the house next door has also disappeared. When the wave came in, I thought I was going to die, he tells me. The water came up around my legs and I thought I would be swept away. I saw a child being swept out to sea. There was nothing I could do to save it. A few meters away, another of his neighbours is picking through the debris of her house, trying to find something, anything that is still usable. Her haul is miserably small.
Everything here has been utterly destroyed. The level of devastation is really quite hard to comprehend. And this is just one small town. It's still not clear how many more places like this there are scattered along the coast that none of us have seen yet.
As we're preparing to leave Kesen Numa, There's a sudden flurry of excitement. A helicopter hovers low over the town centre. And then, from amid the destruction, 2 survivors are plucked to safety. It is a rare moment of hope, the only one we saw here all day. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News in Kesen Numa, northern Japan.
Well, I'll be back a little later with a report on just how difficult it is for people to find the things they need to get on with their lives. But for now, it's back to you, Hugh.
George, talk to you later. Thank you very much. Well, Japan's economy, one of the richest in the world, has been paralysed by the impact of the earthquake and the tsunami. Some of the country's leading manufacturers, including Toyota, Nissan and Honda, have closed all of their factories. The Bank of Japan has spent billions trying to keep the financial markets in a calm state. Our business editor, Robert Peston, is with me here to explain what's going on. Robert, let's deal with, the impact on the Japanese economy and then maybe look further afield.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's a single message from what we've just heard from our correspondents in Japan is that measuring the extent of the damage is incredibly difficult at this stage. I mean, we know that the economic impact on Japan will be significant. Loads of factories have stopped producing, power is being rationed, and just the sheer cost of rebuilding the towns and villages we've seen devastated, well, that is going to be enormous. How big a burden will that be on what is still the world's 3rd largest economy? Nomura, the most powerful, influential Japanese investment bank, thinks that Japan will just about avoid recession. But its economists who I've spoken to say that, in a way that forecast it's a bit better than sticking your finger up in the air and trying to work out which way the wind is blowing, but it's not a lot more scientific than that. Now, as for the impact on the rest of us, Japan did stagnate as an economy for almost 20 years, but it's a relatively self-contained economy, and during that period, the impact on the rest of us wasn't that great. Now, plainly, if it got into dire straits, we would be affected, but I think there is a degree to which we'll be protected. Probably the biggest impact on places like the UK and the US will be on our plans to invest heavily in the nuclear industry. Depending on what we ultimately learn has gone on in these damaged reactors, that frankly will have a profound impact on the debate here about how fast we should try and fill our own energy gap with nuclear power.
Robert, thank you very much. Robert Peston there, our business editor.